Hello, Governor. Welcome to Away Games, a Chicago Cubs podcast. I'm Kevin McCaffrey, and Adam Amwal is here. We're in the same virtual room for once.
It's true. Meanwhile, our Cubbies are in London town, innit?
Isn't it indeed? Yes, and I've seen online there's a decent amount of people who are over there. I saw Evan Altman is over there covering from
Kara Fagan, we saw.
Kara Fagan. That's
Yeah.
the Cubs Twitter people, two of them that I've seen over there. So that's nice. You and I were going to go before COVID happened. We had tickets bought and everything. So
Did you entertain the idea of going to this one or not really?
I would say I did not entertain it. Did you ever consider it?
Like very amorphously, and then I just as other like travel kind of stacked up and going to Hawaii early this month, I was like, there's only so much money I can really spend. But I don't know if I've told you this. I will be seeing the Cubs internationally this year. I have tickets to a game in Toronto, so I'm going to check another stadium off the list.
That's cool. That's a good one. My Toronto experience was I saw my Ball State Fighting Cardinals lose a bowl game there. So I've seen a football game in that stadium, but I've never seen a baseball game. So if I need to, I'll count it and cross it off. But
Sure.
I get where the baseballs would have gone.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But cool. Well, this is actually the first time that you and I are talking about the Cubs in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, things are looking up in Cubs land. I don't want to say that it was me, but I did prophesize last week on the podcast. I put it out into the universe that a week from now, you and I would be talking about the Cubs having won at least 3 in a row at some point, and they've done more than that. And I don't know how you're feeling. At the end of the day, the Cubs are still 2 games under 500, but in a very winnable division. Like morale was at an all-time low, I think, after the Angels sweep, and now
Yes, I would
here we
agree with
are
that.
since then. I want to say they've won 9 of 11 since then, or 10 out of 12.
Yeah, I think it is 10 out of 12. It's certainly 8 of the last 10 looking at the stats right here, but I think it was 10 out of 12, and it has them sitting 3.5 games back of the Reds, who just haven't lost since I was in my 30s almost at this point. Like the Reds just keep winning, and they're more they're 10 and over the last 10, but I think they're beyond that, right? They're like 12 wins or something like that. So the Reds have shot all the way to the top of the division. The Brewers are 1.5 games back, and then the Cubs are 3.5 games back. But, convict the Cubs for the murder of the 2023 Pittsburgh Pirates. Jesus Christ. A full double sweep against them when I think the Pirates were in first when the series began, right?
Yeah, when the series began at the previous series at Wrigley, the Pirates were in first. The Cubs were 6.5 back, and then I think by the end of that series they had gotten to 3.5 back, and that's one of the things that I talked about last week when I was doing my little solo pod, was just the idea that, like, yes, 2 out of 3 sounds good, like going 2-1, sure. In the playoffs, that'll win you a World Series, but in the regular season, you just can't make up that much ground if you're winning 2 out of 3 because you're only making up 1 game as opposed to making up 3 games, and we've already seen the fruits of that. I mean, the Cubs. So they swept the Pirates. They won 2 out of 3 against the Orioles, and inevitably lost the Sunday game, as the Cubs are wont to do.
Hate a Sunday.
Yeah, it's almost like bizarre how bad they are on Sundays, particularly on the third game of a potential sweep. But then they come back right after that 5-game winning streak being snapped, and they sweep a series in Pittsburgh and go into this little mini London series with a chance to come back to the States 500 if they win both games. So there's a part of me, and I've seen some of this on Cubs Twitter also, of like, I hope this doesn't disrupt the good juju. Like, it's a sort of thing where if the Cubs had been scuffling, this would have been a nice reset. But now that they're playing well, you almost wish that they didn't have to have 2 days off. But it'll be interesting.
I can definitely see how you can sort of put that narrative together already. And the Cardinals have been so bad. They've been just terrible. They've been one of the worst teams in the league. And it seems like this is what you would schedule for them, right? To sort of turn things around and whatever. But I don't know. I could sound very stupid after this, but I just don't feel like that's the case. The Cardinals pitching is just bad. I think that's just, so I mean, they were going to be bad. I didn't think they were going to be this bad, but they're not good at that. So I'm not too concerned with them getting back on track. And then I think in some ways this trip is kind of nice because if you're going to travel internationally with your team and you're going to go do something weird, have more days off, more sort of free time, even if some of that free time is traveling, you couldn't have the vibes much better than they've been lately, right?
Right.
Wouldn't it be so much worse if you were just like sucking and losing and just like,
And then
well,
you had to do all these press junkets and yeah.
yeah. So I think in some sense it's a deep breath and it could be like a good reset even in good times. I'm hopeful that
Yeah.
like the Cubs go at the teams out there, they're enjoying a thing. They're probably feeling a little bit more like they deserve to be on an
Hmm.
international stage now than they would have a couple of weeks ago where we were just like, just sending our worst. No offense to people in Florida, but every times I've been to Florida, that's how I felt about America. It's like this is just where we're sending our worst every time I've been down there. They're all from somewhere else, and goddamn, it is a lot of not my vibe. So I felt like that's what we were doing with the Cubs and Cardinals to England. Like, yeah, this is baseball. What the fuck is this? Get it out of here.
Right.
So now at least we're bringing some quality over there.
Or yeah, or it's that thing where in the way that the London football game, it's always like Jags versus
Yeah.
Jets or whoever, and you're like, oh, you're just taking advantage of the fact that people are going to come to a game because it's a novelty. So I feel like it has been cool that the first two London series are Yankees Red Sox and Cubs Cardinals, because I'm sure
Hmm.
5 years from now it's going to be like Royals Marlins is the
Hmm.
London matchup. Just hoping that people still come out for the novelty of it. Now, this is my pitch, and I don't think this is going to be popular, but I think because in England, obviously, you drive on the other side of the road. I think
Yeah.
that for these two games, everybody should have to use their opposite hand for everything. So I think all the righty pitchers throw lefty, vice versa. Same with batters, and just see where we land.
Yeah, man, it would be a great time to have Javi Baez back in
Oh
that
yeah.
case. One of the all-time just other-handedness dudes. Yeah, that's true. I feel like I know the announcers were talking about the other day that Seiya Suzuki actually has a very good left-handed swing and does a pitch perfect impression of Ian Happ swinging from
I
the
did hear that. Yeah, that's very
that
funny.
side, which is cool. So yeah, that would be interesting to see. Also, you got to run to third base first. You go, you reverse it. The driving wise, you just go the other direction.
I have at times been sitting at a bar where like a baseball game is in a reflection of a mirror, and it's very
Yes.
interesting to watch like a reversed, like seeing Lefty Sosa hit a home run and do a hop and then run to third is very funny.
Yeah, it is weird how in a mirror sometimes you can see a guy not even know who it is, but it will look wrong, where
Right.
it's like it should be perfectly symmetrical, but weird. The mysteries of the universe. There's just something about being a natural lefty that is that it just hits different, I guess.
Indeed, indeed.
But as far as the like good vibe stuff lately goes, my favorite thing I will say, I've talked on the show about how I've had an emotional disconnect from the Cubs more than probably ever in my life that I've been aware of them in the last year or so, last couple years, really. The nicest thing for me this entire season has been watching Kyle Hendricks the last few games. And watching Kyle Hendricks, he's sitting here with a 2.6 ERA now, and it's not just the results. He looks really good. The velocity is as
Right.
high as it's ever been, but also, man, that changeup that people just can't lay off, that fades down. Watching people
Mhm.
swing over that changeup is just it's one of my favorite pitches to ever watch in baseball.
Yeah, and I mean nothing makes me happier than seeing someone be late on an 87-mile-an-hour fastball.
Yeah, when he's busting it up, and guys, you can see them almost cursing themselves as soon as they start swinging, where they're just like,
Right.
"God, this isn't fast, but I'm still too late." Is really fun. It's such a thing where I don't know if I'd say optimistic, but I was hopeful that Hendricks would come back and be good because he's not that old, and he's a
Right.
guy who, if he could get the velocity up to where it's ever been, there shouldn't be too much of a reason for him to not be good again. And as we heard, he's a pitcher who's calling his own games fully through PitchCom. It sounds
Mhm.
like he's like not utilizing the catcher really in
Right.
that way, which I think is interesting. And he in this moment, knock on wood, yeah, things can change, health can change, but at this moment, I don't know why you wouldn't pick up the option on him at the end of the year. That he's pitching like prime Hendricks. It's awesome.
What is the dollar amount on the option?
I'm fairly sure it's 16. I'll check that just to make sure. But let's see. Yeah, he signed a 4-year, $55 million extension a couple
That's a
years
steal.
ago. It was an incredible steal. God, yeah. It was the numbers went 12, 14, 14, 14 this year, and it would be a club option for 16 million next year. And for a mid-rotation starter, that
Right.
you just take that. You take that immediately. 16 million in his age 34 year, and yeah, and maybe there's a place where you can work out like a 2-year extension and get the AAV down, you know. So
Right.
again, getting ahead of ourselves, but it's hard not to when we're watching one of the best Cubs pitchers of a generation come back and be better so far
Yeah.
than you could have expected.
Well, and the other day, the getaway day win in Pittsburgh, Kyle Hendricks, you're talking about him not being that old. He looked as not old as he could comparatively going up against the oldest player in baseball, Rich Hill.
Rich Hill, who's older than me by some margin, too, by several years. It's great and it's fun. Rich Hill's such a cool story and a cool guy. Actually, when we had our guest Infield Fly Girl over on the show, she was mentioned how Rich Hill was one of her all time faves, and it's weird because he's been around so long. You know, I know
Mhm.
people are sharing the lineup of the Cubs when he debuted with the Cubs back in the
Right.
day, and it was like, you know, Matt Lawton and Nomar Garciaparra and just
Oh
like it
boy.
was just insane times. uh but he was old for a prospect when he debuted. He
Yeah.
was 25
It's
when
like
he
Charlie
did.
Morton, kind of. Morton's
Yeah,
another guy who like peaked a little later and is still around.
totally. And he's still hitting 90, and he didn't have like a great game against the Cubs. Nico really did a great just line drive at that short at that nearby tall right field wall.
Yeah.
Poked one over, poked I think a triple down that way. He didn't have his best game, but Rich Hill's just like, man, if he's still hitting 90 at 43 and he's doing all his weird arm angles and that curveball, why ever retire?
Yeah, totally. And the other thing, talking about the pitching staff, that is kind of nice about the London series is that it gives the Cubs the opportunity to line up Steele and Stroman in these two games. And then obviously when they get back, I think they have an extra. Is it just one or two off days? I think it's maybe just one. But either way, they get to skip some of their rotation and have their dogs going, which is
Hmm.
never a bad thing.
Yeah, it's nice get to shuffle it up, and in this case, maybe that means a little more side work from Jameson Tyone, maybe, because really
Yeah.
that's the only pitcher there that's not cooking right now. You know, I mean, the
Mhm.
rotation looks really good. Otherwise, like everyone,
Yeah.
you know, Hendricks, Stroman, and Steele pitching like they're pitching right now, and Smiley too. I mean, that
Yeah.
it's not. I guess you could think of bigger name 4-man rotations, but in terms of effectiveness, that itself is a playoff rotation. I don't think the lineup is a playoff ready lineup, and I don't think it's going to be this year. But
Right.
I do think that is a playoff worthy four.
It definitely is. And it continues to make me think that the Cubs should try to extend Marcus Stroman. And
Mhm.
I also think that Steele and Stroman at this moment are Stroman is for sure an all-star. I think
Yeah.
Steele has a very good case to be. But yeah, good for him. I mean, I always I want to be clear that we're not actual real life friends with Justin Steele, but having had the guy on the podcast 3 times, the first time I think he was in Double A, maybe. It's cool to
Mhm.
see what all that he's been able to accomplish, and now here he is starting a game in London on a big national slash international stage, and maybe he'll be in Seattle in a month.
Yeah, and Steele is one of the more fun Cubs tweeters. It's not that he's tweeting a lot, but he will whenever he does. It's just nice and fun and
Yeah,
supportive, and he's an actively good follow in an untroubled way,
right.
which is nice. And yeah, I think the only thing that would keep Steele off the All Star team at this point is like missing some time, you know.
Right.
And it would be ever more. I'm rooting for Steele to make the All Star team. It would just be ever more ridiculous that Kyle Hendricks has never made an All Star team when he went through a
Yeah.
6-year reign where he was a top 7 pitcher in baseball and
Right.
somehow never made a goddamn All Star team. And it looks like since he missed the time, that'll continue too. But yeah.
Now they apparently, I was hearing this on the Compound podcast. They have altered the fence distances for England because apparently they felt, inflation was a problem even back then. It was a
Yeah.
17-13 was the first game between the Yankees and Red Sox. I don't remember who won, but that's a really ridiculous score.
Yeah. Does it have
And
something to do with
so
the metric system over there? Is that what's
I
happening?
think it's
Was
the
it mix
conversion
up?
rate. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
So we'll
they're
see. Yeah,
moving
we'll
it
see what the
out.
score. Yeah, they're making
Okay.
it more difficult to hit home runs, but also Ian Happ on that podcast was saying like, yeah, but also that was in 2019 when the balls were flying, so that could also have been part of it. But
Right. Well, that's interesting to see. And as we're recording this, game one in London is in a couple hours, right?
oh no, that's tomorrow.
It's tomorrow. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool. It's
It's
tomorrow. It's
tomorrow at
Saturday,
tomorrow at 1 o'clock Eastern and Sunday at 10 a.m. Eastern, which will be
10
fun.
a.m.
Little bangers and mash and banging and mashing.
Yeah, too bad Mash Mervis himself isn't
It's
there
true.
on this one. Otherwise, that would have been perfect. In terms of the things that have turned around since 2 weeks ago when you and I were on live mics together, I guess Bellinger had just come back. Probably was and
Mhm.
now it seems like he's pretty much playing almost strictly first base right now, which is different. You know.
Supposedly, the plan is to get him back into center after this trip. Although
Okay.
Talkman is playing a great center, and he's also been super valuable in the lineup. So I definitely hope that there's a way that we keep Talkman out there because I think he's clearly proven that he deserves to be.
Yeah, Togman's been great as a fill-in out there in center, and especially like it's interesting because Cody Bellinger defensively is the Cubs. He's the Cubs' best defensive player at two positions, at center field and at first base both. He's already by Fangraphs calculation, even with the missed time, worth 1.2 wins above replacement at this point. Something that snuck up on me. He's stolen 10 bases already, even with the missed time. I saw that and did like a
Bellinger?
yeah. I saw that and did like a double take. I was like, is
And
that
he's missed like a month of games. I think he missed 26 games.
yeah, he's really taken advantage of the of the new rules and stuff because his previous career high in stolen bases is 15 in 2019. So he's just like he's really swiping bags at a great rate, which is good because adding the value on base running and defense is how he's getting his value. His he you know how hot he started with the bat. He's only at 105 weighted runs created plus, so he's 5% above league average offensively with the bat at this point because he's been in like a slump offensively
Yeah.
since he came back and also for a while before he was injured. So it's you
But
know
he's also a streaky player, I
he
feel.
is a streaky player
It's
exactly,
like
and that
Rizzo
is
that way.
like Rizzo, like Morel, we've seen too
Baez,
is
obviously. Yeah.
streaky in that way. So I hopefully we're due for a good streak offensively for Bellinger soon here. You know, you would like to see some signs of life coming back around, just coming off the last couple years of not really having it at the plate. So
How many home runs does he have right now?
Bellinger is sitting there with 7 home runs.
I think it's very much within his reach to have a 2020 season, like home runs and steals. I think that's or even 25
I
seems
think
attainable.
if he stays moderately healthy the rest of the way, I think he should have that. So yeah,
Yeah.
we'll see how that goes. But yeah, even just having his competence back in the
Hmm.
lineup has been such a huge lift. I mean, we heard part of the reason why the Cubs signed Eric Hosmer, R.I.P., was just to raise the floor of how bad first base has been, and
Right.
that's sort of what Cody Bellinger is doing right now because Mervis just didn't have
Hmm.
it. Mancini, the offense has shown some flashes, but good lord, defensively at first is an absolute nightmare. God bless you.
Mancini is lucky that the lighter's left arm bone is not sticking through his skin. That was one of the most heinous non-injuries that looked like it should have been an injury I've ever seen in my life.
1,000,000,000%. I yelled loudly enough to startle my wife from the next room when I saw
I was
that.
watching that live, and
Same.
yeah,
Yeah, basically there was a slow roller that would have gotten the Cubs out of the inning with no runs to first, and Mancini took a long time to field it, and then messed up the transfer from the glove to the hand, and then messed up the toss on the way to Leiter, and Leiter had to contort himself around in a way to try to catch it. Didn't work, and he landed like I just whatever Mark Leiter dropped the yoga program, I guess. Like however he avoided injury, it looked like CGI what his arm did, and thankfully he's okay because him Alzolay closer big closer vibes Adbert Alzolay, which I think has really taken place in the last couple weeks too. I don't know if we've been talking since he was really solidified as the closer here.
yeah. I don't think we have, and maybe this is like an old school mentality, but I am kind of the mindset that it helps people to know their roles. So
Yeah.
I like having him as the closer. I think having Leiter as kind of your setup guy And then Fulmer has been better. Like I think kind of plugging him in certain areas where you need to either eat innings or in some bigger spots. The one really, speaking of injuries that did happen, I'm sure you saw what happened with Cody Hoyer. It's like it makes you feel sick to your stomach when somebody does all that work to come back. And then, do we have a final report on what happened?
I have not seen a report yet, but it's just one of those things where it feels like everyone kind of knows. So if you don't know, Cody Hoyer is one of the guys, along with Nick Madrigal, who's come back and been useful, by the way. Cody Hoyer came over in the Kimbrel trade. He was recovering from Tommy John, and he was down there in Iowa. He was pumping it up there at 99, looking pretty good. I think the command wasn't fully there yet, which is why he wasn't up with the team yet. And then he came in, he threw one pitch. The pitch sort of sailed way over the hitter's head, and he just jumped up and down and like ran off the mound, yelled, and you could tell like, oh Jesus. I mean that I don't even know. I have not seen an official report on what happened yet, but it seems like in
That
late
felt like something
he's
like
fucked.
blowing out. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, the
Um,
only silver lining is that the pitch actually hit John Sterling in the face. But
yeah, so he's helping out some of good vibes, I guess, for who it hit. According to the Cubs, Cody Hoyer's still under evaluation. I don't know how that's really possible. Yeah, nothing officially reported there yet. Julie Merriweather, a bullpen wise, looks
yeah, he's been great.
He's been really good since the first time he was bad, and now he's sort of moved up from just being good in mop-up roles and low leverage situations to now he sort of is forming the three you really count on with.
I think he's in the circle of trust for sure.
Yes.
And also, why am I completely blanking on that left-hander's name that they've been using more recently?
Anthony Kay,
Yeah,
right?
Anthony Kay.
Anthony Kay is who you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yes.
And I feel like he's been reasonably reliable, and also like you know much more about prospects than I do, but like I was not really aware of his existence, and now he's been with the big league team, and I feel like has looked pretty good.
Yeah, he's Anthony Kay's he's 28, and he I believe was with the Blue Jays before this, and was sort of a borderline major league roster guy, sort of bouncing back and forth, and the stuff is good. I mean, the velocity is certainly good from a left-hander out of the bullpen. I think he was hitting 94 last time I saw him. So yeah, it's it seems like the bullpen, it was such a mess earlier in the season and everyone was so bad. It seems like it's finally now coming into a little bit of shape, and at least enough competent pieces where if that's a thing at the deadline, if the Cubs keep winning anywhere near this rate, maybe that's a place where you get something to just not even necessarily a top end closer, but something to just shape that up a little more. But yeah, I mean, I think it was we were saying the Cubs are just still, after all this winning, because of all the losing that came before it, are a couple games under 500 still. But I think this is much closer to what the talent level of the team is. I as everyone listening knows, I haven't been a huge cheerleader on like this team's going to contend, but I think this is closer. Like
they can contend for the division.
Yeah, they can contend for the worst division. Yes, they can do that.
And then also, like, let's say that the Cubs do get into the playoffs somehow. They do have a pretty formidable rotation if their pitchers keep pitching the way they have. Does that mean that I think even if they somehow eke out 85 wins and win a bad division, that I think they can win the World Series? Not necessarily, but I think if you're in the playoffs, you always have a shot if you get hot.
Yeah, you can. They're a team that could maybe start, grind out some low scoring games. In which case, you probably are going to want to, in that case, Bellinger is probably, or someone else is probably your full time first baseman, because I don't think we don't have like a playoff solution at first base right now, unless Taubman continues to have like a career year at 32 in center, which I hope and is possible. And Bellinger's over there, so couple.
Yeah, and also like hopefully the Cubs continue playing well enough that it forces Hoyer's hand into adding rather than subtracting. I think even if the trade deadline were right now and the Cubs were 2 games under 500 but still 3.5 back in the division, I think there would still be a case for trying to add or at least stand pat.
It feels like it shouldn't at this point be a year for a strong sell, and because you
Yeah.
do need to stay in the mix. But what I think by the deadline, what you have to do is, if it continues like this, I think you have to make decisions for 2024. That doesn't mean necessarily getting an extension done mid-season with Stroman. That kind of thing doesn't typically happen. But you need to get a plan together, and
Hmm.
you need to. And if you do make a deal, it needs to be a deal that's also looking at 2024, when you should be hopefully better than this too. So
Right.
I think this is an interesting trade deadline because it's not just it shouldn't just be about the deep future, and it shouldn't just be about the second half of this year either. It should
Yeah.
be, you should look at the trade deadline as almost like the second half of this season and next full year as one.
Hmm. Now, when you look at the division, I mean, obviously the Reds are they? Is it 11 straight they've won?
At least, yeah, I think
Yeah.
so.
Do you see them as being legit contenders for the Central? I mean, I guess anyone is really.
Yes,
Do you think that they're legitimate?
I do. I mean, like they called up Ellie De La Cruz, who is, was arguable for number one prospect in baseball, right?
Hmm.
And Jonathan India, until footage comes out that puts him in jail based on January 6th, he's playing good at this point. He's been a real a real spark plug for them, and they have a good Alexis Diaz, Edwin Diaz's brother, has been untouchable,
Yeah.
like at the back of that bullpen. And the young pitching's been good. So, and Joey Votto just came back
Hmm.
up, homered in his first game back, and it's just like
Yeah, they've been drawing, they've been getting 30,000 people out, and I just want to say congratulations on having an average amount of people at a baseball game. Good for you.
Commissioner Adam Mamawala over here. Congratulations. Yes. God, Manfred's a real piece of shit. Just as a
He's the
person,
worst. Yeah.
too. Like, yeah. You guys probably saw him talking about the A's.
Never thought I'd be pining for Bud Selig, but here we are.
Good Lord. Yeah. I at least thought Bud Selig, I do think, liked baseball,
Hmm.
Like, I don't think that comes into play with Manfred. What a garbage guy. Yeah. I do think the Reds are genuine contenders in this division. I think if the Brewers get healthy in the rotation and the lineup starts coming around at all, I think they're
Hmm.
probably still the favorites, but yeah,
I
anyone's.
feel like the Brewers have not been the same team since they traded Josh Hader, and I could very much understand why the Brewers fans would be pissed off about that. I still don't understand why the hell they did that last year.
Really looking at the numbers, it was just
Yeah.
like looking at, and the numbers being the money numbers too, but just looking
Right.
at it in a way where they're like, well, we could replace most of Hader's production with Rogers, and it just didn't. I think that's
Yeah.
overlooking some of the human factor too,
Hmm.
to a team, and like, like, not to be an old meatball guy, but overlooking vibes and chemistry a little bit
Hmm.
too. And I'm not a Hader lover, but I that obviously that he was a super important part of that team, and yeah, that's obviously one that has not worked out.
Yeah. So looking ahead, let's see after the London series, I believe there's a homestand. Yeah,
Sure.
Cubs come back for a little home cooking. Who do they have? So they have 6 games at home, 3 against Philly, 3 against Cleveland. Um, well, I mean,
Yeah, that's
I don't
fine.
know. Yeah,
You know.
that's fine.
Yeah, home games against those teams. If you're a division contender, even in a shit division at home, you should be hoping to take 3 to 5 of those games, probably.
Right, right.
So we'll see.
And we're very close to the All-Star break here. We've got the London series, then that homestand, and then a 7-game road trip that ends here in New York,
Mhm.
at Yankee Stadium. And then that's it. That's the end of the first half. And are you going to be in town for those? Are you going to be out of town for the
I'm not. I'm
Yankee
going to be out
series?
of. Yeah, I'll be out of town when the Cubs are in. Almost completely this year. I
Oh,
think.
even when they're at Citi Field?
I think so. Yeah.
Bummer.
Hmm.
Oh
So,
well.
well, they've played really well when you and I haven't been virtually together. So maybe they'll play well when we're not in the stadium
Well,
together too.
in the spirit of last week's manifestation, I'm going to just say preemptively for 2 weeks from now, this will be the year that the Cubs win a game at Yankee Stadium. They have never won a single game at either Yankee Stadium, which is genuinely ridiculous. I think they've played at least like 15 games or something like that.
That's insane. Yeah,
Yeah,
I went to the first game there that was preseason at New Yankee
I was there
Stadium,
too. Yeah.
and certainly went to all three the first time they were there in what 2004, I want to say.
Hmm.
I went to all three of those games, watched those get swept. Yeah, I think they could take one at Yankee Stadium this year. Watch Anthony Rizzo walk them off 3 games in a row.
According to the internet, the Yankees and Cubs have played 27 games against each other all time in history,
Mhm.
including playoffs and regular season. The Yankees are 23-4
Mm.
against the Cubs.
I remember the Cubs beat Roger Clemens when he was a Yankee at
Yes.
Wrigley, right?
We recently passed the 20-year anniversary of the Eric Karros game, which was also the game in which Hesop Choi collided with Kerry Wood and smacked his head and had to get like ambulanced off the field. Crazy
Jesus
times.
Christ. Great Cubs memories.
Truly,
Classic
yeah.
shit. Cool. All
But
right. Well, I think that's
yeah.
all I got. You can follow us at Away Games Pod on Twitter. Any parting thoughts, Adam?
No, let's go get two dubs in London and come back a 500 team.
Hello, hello.